So guys, one time, while I was wandering around a car boot seal on a brisk winter's morn, I met a man. But not just any man. A sad man. He had tears in his eyes and the appearance of someone burdened by something horrific. He handed me a VHS tape and shouted, "Take it! Take it and destroy it!" Which I can't do because I got tickets to see a Madagascar 2 and I don't want to be late, and I biked home as the sun fell, nightfall taking over, the whole time feeling as if some sort of dark presence had been looming over me. I brushed it off as nerves, as I had only one thing on my mind. What could possibly be on the tape? Despite the man's warnings, I placed the tape in my VCR, which I own for some reason, where I was presented with a person with an unusually annoying voice who said, "Last year I made a big old video talking about dumb cartoon theories that are dumb. You've got your coma theories, your imagination theories, Toy Story 3 represents the Holocaust." One thing I frequently saw pop up in the comments was folks discussing their own favorite dark cartoon theories. But I couldn't help but think in response to half of them, that ain't a theory, that's a goddamn creepypasta. Like, there is nothing theoretical about dead Bart. That's just for the spookies. It's tough because in concept they're pretty similar and hard to differentiate. Both are just made up stories about a pre-existing cartoon with the intent of making the reader unsettled. But the main difference to me is that cartoon theories are designed to make you go, interesting. Whereas cartoon creepypastas are designed to make you go, ah. However, the most crucial difference between them for me is that creepypastas actually used to scare me. Yeah, I was that kid. I would watch some ordinary gamers our Eurofwind and get genuinely spooked at them covering the haunted Luigi's Mansion copy or banned drawings. Basically, color in the eyes black and I was certifiably terrified. Most of those were in relation to gaming though. You see, despite creepypastas initially getting their start as original internet horror stories like Jeff the Killer or Laughing Jack, people quickly started gravitating towards the stories made by edgy 15-year-olds, trying their best to convince you Matt Groening cried on stage at a convention over the thought of Bart Simpson getting murdered, or attempting to make you believe that Notch for some reason programmed in his own dead brother to Minecraft like that wouldn't be the most tasteless shit ever. And it worked! Suddenly the creepypastas based on pre-existing IP started flooding the forums, to the point where an entirely new term had to be made up to differentiate the stuff actually worth reading to the crap. They're called crappypastas naturally. No matter how crappy the pasta though, I would always get creeped out by these. Didn't even matter if the person narrating the story would interject with how dumb these were. As long as you put that unsettling Pokemon music in the background, I was sweating. Worst part is, I would actively seek these out despite knowing that something as lame as the Teals doll had the power to scare me. I would watch those videos talking about how Nintendo totally intended on this one shadow glitching in Luigi's Mansion to look like he was hanging himself. Go, that's it, I've had enough creepypastas for one lifetime. But then at night, I would get one of my recommendations and go, Squidward suicide? Come on, Mark, you're 10 years old. You can watch a video called Squidward suicide without getting scared, right? This image traumatized me. I don't know what it was, genuinely I don't. I think I was just impressionable, and as long as something was presented in a way that had the intention to scare me, then it was gonna scare me. Creepypastas have undoubtedly lessened in popularity over the years, the term mainly having a bad reputation given to it from the influx of these poor stories that would make any high school English teacher weep. Also, kids today, oh god, I've turned into one of those, care way more about mascot horror. I mean, who the hell wants to read anything? It's the year of our Lord and Savior. We all want to play the horror now. Or at least watch Markiplier play it. And because of that, I thought it would be fun to go down memory lane and look at some of the most memorable cartoon creepypastas out there. Memorable for good or bad reasons, though, is up to you. Mostly bad. Also, if you're asking yourself, Mark, didn't you already make this video like 5 years ago? Then in reply, I'd say, that was really 5 years ago? Oh my god. Like when I talked about the theories, I want to segment these into topics. Although that's going to be a lot harder to do this time, as it's much more difficult to find any of these that don't fall into the same topic. Said topic being, the lost episode. But first, want to know something scarier than Squidward tentacles with red eyes? Aside from everything. It's having your personal information get stolen, and that's why I'm glad that this video is sponsored by Aura. This video is sponsored by Aura. Did you know over 2.9 billion records were stolen from a national public data breach, including a person's full name, address, phone number, and even social security number? That's bad. So I sure am glad I got Aura to help protect myself. Aura shows you which data brokers have been selling your info and automatically subs opt-out requests. They'll even give you fast fraud alerts for your bank account, or if any other sensitive information has been compromised. Not only does this reduce the amount of spam you get, but it also protects you from people who want to use your information to get into personal stuff. Again, like your bank account. It's also this perfect all-in-one tool for transaction monitoring, VPN, antivirus, password manager, parental controls, and way more, all for an affordable price. So stop data brokers from exposing your personal information and go to aura.com/lsmark for a 2-week free trial and see how much of yours is getting stolen. Again, that's aura.com/lsmark, and thanks Aura for sponsoring this video. Now, what's the easiest way to make someone believe your creepypasta when there can be definitive proof as to whether or not it actually exists? You know, the fine people at the Encyclopedia SpongeBob aren't just compiling all this info for the fun of it. It's to have a comprehensive reference point for any and all things SpongeBob. You can hardly just sneak in that there was some random-ass episode where Squidward shot himself in the head and somehow nobody noticed. Well, say it's lost. You can't prove it isn't real. It's lost for a reason, dumbass. Why, do I know about it? Because I work at Nickelodeon. Oh, really? Cool. Can I see your badge? What? Okay, I worked at Nickelodeon. Cool, what's your name? Are you in the credits of any— I was an intern! My name won't come up! Just stop asking me questions and let me just tell you about Squidward killing himself in peace! Squidward suicide, also referred to as Red Mist for some reason. A creepypasta so infamous that it even managed to get reference in the show itself. Before getting replaced with something even more disturbing. For as much as people can shit on Nickelodeon for pushing back against this, to be fair, I can't imagine there wasn't at least a few children who started screaming at the sight of this genuine jump scare, and perhaps got afraid to watch the show anymore as a result.
What you guys doing?
Watching SpongeBob.
Oh,
You know, for as much as this story is memed on and ridiculed nowadays, there are thousands of people who undoubtedly stumbled upon it and thought it was real. Including me. Look no further than the comment sections to find a plethora of people reminiscing about how scared this deal used to make them, and how in retrospect that fact is laughable. And it's for one hyper-realistic reason. It's bad. Sorry to break it to you Squidward suicide enjoyers out there, but it's been common knowledge for like a decade now that this shit sucks, and whoever wrote it probably needs to see a therapist or at least an English teacher. The gist of it is that we're told this story from the perspective of an intern who joined Nickelodeon shortly after the release of the first SpongeBob movie. But this unpaid dream job quickly turns into a nightmare. The funniest thing about these creepypastas is how much they want you to suspend your disbelief. How much bizarre lines are thrown in here that you're just meant to accept at face value. Like that the crew would purposefully edit in fake vulgar title cards. Like that wouldn't be the biggest risk they could possibly do. Yeah, that's not a potential lawsuit waiting to happen if one of those were to accidentally get sent to air. Or that the crew of SpongeBob would go out of their way to make explicit and borderline pornographic material based off the show. Oh wait. Unfortunately, the biggest case of this comes from the entire concept of the story itself. Being that somehow, somewhere, by someone, an entire episode of SpongeBob was written, boarded, and animated without anybody knowing, with it for some reason getting sent in instead of the season 4 premiere they were expecting. The entire thing hinges on you believing this episode just came out of nowhere. Like I meant to not imagine the devil himself hunched over a table at 3 in the morning trying his best to learn how to animate Squidward tentacles holding a shotgun. The actual lost episode itself is quite possibly the least interesting aspect of it all. Really, all that happens over the course of what the intern sees is Squidward getting booed off stage doing a concert, before going home and killing himself. But they sure do drag that out for a good few paragraphs. Endless walking and sobbing and blood. The author tries to be as descriptive as possible to up the spooks, but when you really sit and think about it, the details he gives in attempt to this only make it more stupid. For example, during the supposed scene of Squidward sitting on his bed and crying, he claims, "The eerie part is that this sound, and Squidward sobbing, sounded real. It was like it wasn't coming from the speakers, but that the speakers themselves were holes that the sound was traveling through from the other side." So like a speaker. None of these red flags seem to deter the team, by the way. Despite the episode frequently flashing real-life photos of murdered children on screen, they push forward, hoping that this was just a sick joke. Good one, guys. I had to choke back vomit, and one intern, the only female in the room, ran out. Women, am I right? Can't handle their dead cephalopods. Then there are other moments that are trying to get you immersed, going into such detail that every now and then he says something that makes you remember, oh yeah, this is SpongeBob. Squidward went silent, all sound cut out, like it did when the scene started. He put his tentacles down. Like, how could I not laugh at that? And then after all that, all the pictures of dead children, hyper-realistic Squidward shooting himself, and Steven Hillenburg supposedly bursting out of the room furious, they watched it again, naturally. The only theory we could think of was that the file had been edited by someone in the chain from the drawing studio to here. What? The story then ends with this helpful anecdote. I never believed in unexplainable phenomena before, but now that I've had something happen to me and can't prove anything about it beyond anecdotal evidence, I think twice about things. Huh? That's your takeaway? Basically, what I think the author is trying to say here is, well, even though there's no evidence of this episode ever existing, even though there's no employee at Nickelodeon who knows of its existence beside me, and even though there's no way I can prove having worked at Nickelodeon, you gotta believe me. He shot himself. It was terrifying. Boo! There have since been a few attempts by folks across the internet to try and recreate the story as best they can in a visual medium. However, I only find them to make the story even worse, as all they can do is re-edit already existing SpongeBob footage to the best of their ability, while poorly editing in weird bloodshot eyes and shit. But nothing too gory so they can still post it to YouTube. Or they try to draw it themselves, in which, yeah, good luck trying to convincingly replicate what it takes a talented team of underpaid Koreans a year to produce. None of this, however, mattered to me as a kid, because this image was creepy, and so scared I was. Not enough to ever be fearful of SpongeBob or refuse to watch it anymore out of fear of the dreaded Squidward suicide slipping through Nickelodeon's cracks and making it to air. But I do vividly remember times where I would be trying to sleep as a kid, trying to take my mind off the fact that the Teals doll could be anywhere in my room right now plotting to kill me, in which I would try my best to think about anything else, my brain responding, well, what if Squidward's suicide was standing at the end of your slightly open door right now? Oh yeah, thanks. Dead Bart, though, was the complete opposite. This shit never fazed me. Guess I'm just built different, I don't know. I think Dead Bart left little to no impact on me for one reason, and it's that the image most often associated with the teal was nothing more than a still frame from the show. An unsettling image, to be fair, probably one of the most grotesque things ever drawn on The Simpsons, but I could never look at it without thinking, that's not Bart! You can't pull a fast one on me, author, that's fucking Homer! Okay, well actually there's two reasons it never left any impact on me. The story sucked. Feel like you didn't need me to say that. Safe to say it's a given for everything I'm looking at today. But whereas Squidward's suicide goes all out in the gore and over-exaggerates its scares, which naturally is gonna get to a dumb kid who doesn't understand its shit, Dead Bart instead tries to go for a much more subdued, creepy feel. But it's also shit, so there's not even any blood or guts to trick my child self into being scared. The most laughable aspect of the whole thing to me is how heavily the author tries to lean into the conspiracy angle of it all. Like this time it's not some intern at Fox who bear witness to Dead Bart, but instead it was just discovered by some guy. You know how Fox has a weird way of counting Simpsons episodes? No. They claim said missing episode was written entirely by Matt Groening, but that there's some unspoken attempt on the staff's part to prevent anyone from asking him about it. In addition to getting angry, asking anyone who was on the show about Dead Bart would cause them to do everything they could to stop you from directly communicating with Matt Groening. Honestly, real or not, I think that's a fair response. That doesn't deter our writer, though, as he sneaks through the crowd and catches him alone, naturally asking about the episode, in which Matt began trembling, on the verge of crying. So then he gave him a link to find it. Sure, I mean, why not? Alright, here we go. The guy's gone through all this trouble to watch The Simpsons episode only a few select staff have ever seen. The Simpsons episode so terrifying that it causes grown men to burst into tears. Lay it on me, dude. What happens in Dead Bart? So Bart falls out of an airplane, the family are upset, and they go to his grave. The end. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just take that, extend it out as much as humanly possible, and you got yourself a staple of internet culture right there. There's not much more to say, honestly. The most I can really make fun of here are some of the descriptions given where I just can't tell what the writer is trying to say. At the beginning of the series, Matt had an idea that the animated style of the Simpsons world represented life, and that death made things more realistic. Like, I'm sat here trying to wrap my head around this. What the fuck does that mean? I can't... It doesn't compute. The episode started off like any other, but had very poor quality animation. If you've ever seen the original animation for Some Enchanted Evening, it was similar, but less stable. What does that mean? Something I find strange about these is that the writers never attempt to take things one step further by the end, like a lot of bad creepypastas from the time did. You know, Sonic.exe has the game end with the player seeing something brutal and then he turns around to see the character or whatever is broken out of the computer and is inside his room. Still dumb, but it's like a big old spooky ending. One last scare for the kiddies out there. But not for these. All Dead Bart ends with is the writer trying to introduce this bizarre-ass concept of the episode predicting the deaths of all the Simpsons celebrity guest stars, even the ones who hadn't been on the show yet, but I don't know, I don't care when Lady Gaga dies. Did he just continue on with his day after watching this? The start of the story makes it clear that this episode was supposedly written by Matt Groening. He's not some supernatural being, last time I checked at least. Still though, Dead Bart managed to take the world by storm. And by world, I mean small internet communities, and by storm, I mean select kids dumb enough to believe it. But hey, similar to Squidward's suicide, it was popular enough for some people to try and recreate it. Here's one I find from as far back as 2010, which was 15 fucking years ago. That's the scariest thing I've mentioned so far. But it still suffers from the same issues as Squidward's suicide recreations. You can either edit together existing footage which looks cheap, or draw your own footage which looks cheap. By far the lost cartoon to scare me the most as a kid would have to have been Mice. Which is funny because I've never actually read the story. Now, I want to take you back to a moment in my life called when I discovered Markiplier was a thing. I had just learned about Sonic.exe's existence, and while I engaged with a bunch of videos surrounding the creepypasta, I would never say it scared me. I think it's due to the concept so clearly being made up, where in comparison, the Teals doll traumatized me because it was an actual character from a real Sonic game. There was something tangible there. Either way, I had found Markiplier through his Sonic.exe Let's Play, and naturally, YouTube started to recommend me similar videos from him. One of these was titled 5 Nights at Treasure Island. I'm realizing now this video was about a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game and not a creepypasta, but that didn't matter. Upon scrolling through my recommendations and seeing this, I immediately jumped and closed the tab. Doesn't help that I was sitting alone in my room at night. I cannot stress enough throughout this video, but that was enough to absolutely terrify me. I was a frightened child. Because of that, I avoided mice like the plague anytime I saw a video about it. To a 12-year-old me, it seemed like the creepiest of creepypastas, and so I admitted defeat. Too spooky for me, remember that? As far as I'm aware, Mice, its official name being Mouse.avi, originated as a video for a change, being uploaded to YouTube in late 2009, with the description claiming it to be an unreleased Mickey Mouse cartoon from the 1930s, with the reason for it remaining unreleased being it was simply a few minutes of Mickey walking down a repeating background with an expressionless face, with someone plonking away in the piano as music. Things took a turn, however, as someone made a copy of the short in their computer and noticed the total length was listed as being a couple minutes longer than previously thought. The clip starts getting increasingly more distorted by the minute, the faint murmurs in the background turning into blood-curdling screams as Mickey begins to smile. It's claimed that the only person to actually watch the entirety of this short immediately killed themselves upon its end after saying, "Real suffering is not known." The story then concludes with the author pleading that those who stumble upon the short to not view it, and contact them as they believe Disney is covering up something huge. And so you know what, author? I'ma take that advice. Honestly, I kinda don't want to watch it. Not even because it seems scary, but like, I don't know, have you ever had something that spooked you so much as a kid that even years later you can't really bring yourself to watch it? Like, genuinely, I'm not exaggerating when I say that. I can't watch the first couple seconds of this before pausing and tabbing out. I get actual goosebumps when I read this story, and I don't know why. It's fucking Mickey Mouse. I think it all comes down to the sound design. It's shockingly well done. From the couple seconds I've heard. Hey, I mean, I suppose that conveys how effective it is more than anything else. This has nothing to do with the story, but I've just moved into a new house at the time of working on this video, and my new office is placed in the attic. Pair that with my currently messed up sleep schedule, and it results in me sitting in the dark at 4 a.m. as I read the story in an echoey room, in a house that's still setting. Every creak has me on the edge of my seat. To add insult to injury, I have this little crawl space fittingly positioned right behind where I'm sitting at, and it still needs a fucking handle attached to it. And so as a result of the wind outside, I'm frequently turning around to see the door slightly agape, and fuck, I don't know, it activates my fight or flight. Some monkey brain shit. It takes me right back to that feeling I had seeing that Markiplier thumbnail as a kid. Please let me know I'm not alone in feeling this way about certain things from my childhood. I'm not crazy. Also, I just believe it's easier to make an old black and white cartoon come off unsettling compared to a fucking episode of Family Guy or some shit. That's why I never really gave a shit about creepypastas based on cartoons from the 2010s. I mean, half the fear factor in these things come from the crappy VHS effect. That's something hard to pull off with HD TVs becoming the norm. So, I was watching an episode of Adventure Time, but then something creepy started happening to the footage. It began to stutter with this horrifying looping circle in the center. Ah! Maybe I was also just getting too old to be scared of this stuff. So I don't really have much to say about the more well-known creepypastas based on more recent cartoons like The Grieving based on The Amazing World of Gumball. It was one of the newest shows on the network. It's a cute and mildly entertaining show. Not really my cup of tea. It's a little immature, but my little brother seems to like it quite a bit. Basically, the story boils down to a guy reminiscing about their little brother's affection for the show while they're watching Adult Swim in the morning, as it's announced that a special episode of Gumball would be airing. Things seemed normal at first. However, the music in the intro was different with sloppy colors. So in other words, it wasn't normal. It began with Gumball, the show's 12-year-old protagonist, standing alone facing a corner of his dimly lit classroom. There was no one else in the room, not even his best friend and adopted brother Darwin the goldfish. Well, looks like we got a fucking Gumball expert over here. Thought you didn't like the show, now you're dropping all this lore on us. Goddamn closeted Gumball fans. I was beginning to think this might have been something the creators did as an experiment or something. A test of the animation or sound, perhaps? Is this person stupid or something? Honestly, when it comes to these bad lost episode creepypastas, if you've read one, you've read them all. All the typical happy-go-lucky characters are sad and crying, and Darwin is missing. What could possibly have happened? This wasn't the normal cartoon crying on the show. This was realistic and almost depressing crying. I almost felt like sobbing myself. No, really, are they stupid? It seemed that I had no choice but to call the police, since my other family members were gone that night. It was the reason I could stay up so late to watch Adult Swim in the first place. When I hurriedly dialed the number, I accidentally dropped my cell phone into my cup of Pepsi. Okay, but no, really. The whole thing collapses on itself from this point, spewing out lines which I think the author believes is creepy, but only leaves me scratching my head with how strangely it's presented. Like, okay, listen to this. Similar to Squidward's suicide, the screen starts flashing with real pictures and videos, one of which is described as, over and over, a kitten's face being squished by a woman wearing high heels, which was strange because a so-called friend of mine sent me a picture yesterday of a cat being stepped on and killed. Sounds like you need new friends. After all this, the author finds out their little brother is now missing, and their first course of action, naturally, is to DM Gumball's creator on Twitter, in which we get the most shocking twist of all. The author's a girl? He basically tells them the episode was made as a joke to make fun of their coworker whose kid was murdered by a serial killer. What a prank. He then theorizes that the killer had somehow found the episode tape, edited it to make it even scarier, and hijacked the author's local TV station, but also admits he doesn't know why the author was the only person in the area who saw it, and also how this would somehow result in their house doors getting mysteriously locked, their brother going missing, and their phone falling in the Pepsi. Best wishes, Ben Bakul, and everyone involved with the grieving. Why would he say that? You know what though? Despite how much this creepypasta sucks, I gotta say it was cool the staff of Gumball forever immortalized it by referencing it in the actual series. Pretty sure they were the first to acknowledge a creepypasta like this. Either way, The Grieving is easily the worst lost episode creepypasta that gained any sort of traction. Yeah, glad I grew up with the classics and not this tripe. Miscellaneous, Yeah, okay, I gotta admit, as I've been writing this video, I've come to realize a lot of these cartoon creepypastas fall into the same category, and so for the sake of just talking about whatever the hell I want, here's a bunch of well-known crappy ones, along with a few gems in there. I know, shocking, right? There are some of these that aren't the worst things written by man. Okay, let's build off that Gumball shit with another creepypasta, which infamously involved the creator of the show it's based on. However, difference is this time, the backlash was so extreme, the author had to completely wipe their online presence. All that for a bad creepypasta. Okay, well, if we're being real, this isn't a creepypasta, or like a field attempt at analog horror. Those are the modern man's creepypasta. Basically, it's very similar to the Gumball one, down to the apparent network hijacking and everything. As the author describes watching the SpongeBob episode Something Smells on TV, when it starts glitching. By the way, this whole thing is written like the author is trying to reach the word count for their English essay. As the episode unfolded, I was as captivated as ever, reveling in the humor and camaraderie of the characters. However, when it reached the scene where SpongeBob asks Patrick if he was ugly, an eerie chain of events began to unfold. The screen suddenly froze, plunging my room into darkness for what felt like an eternity. Confusion and fear washed over me as I tried to make sense of the unexpected turn of events. Just say the TV froze, and it was spooky! You get the idea, they were really trying here. Unfortunately, it just sucks that what they were going for was... We'll get to it. So after showing a scary image of SpongeBob, text starts to appear on the side of the screen reading, Steven, why would you murdered me? I thought we were husband and wife. Your behavior was normal at the time when we were together. Why did you kill me? Please, tell me why. I don't know why the author's IQ dropped so severely for that segment, but yeah, no, really, they were going there. They've created this fan fiction where SpongeBob's creator, Stephen Hillenburg, went crazy and killed his wife, before the screen transitions to a doodle of SpongeBob with the text reading, See you in hell, Stephen Hillenburg. The big issue folks had with the story was when it came out. Like, this wasn't some dogshit teal from 2009. This came out after Stephen Hillenburg's passing, and so it's no shock that the readers were more disgusted and angry than scared. Which then led to the author deleting the video along with their entire internet presence. Honestly, deserved. I don't think anybody would have bet an eye at this 10 years ago, but it's the current year, dude. You gotta get a little more self-aware than this. Alright, let's put an end to the SpongeBob. Like with the dumb cartoon theories, it's no shock this show makes up about 50% of the most popular creepypastas. This fucking plankton image has been invading my timeline for months now. Make it stop. I barely even associate it with the creepypasta anymore. It's trying so hard to be scary that it horseshoed around and became a meme. So this image comes from the story Plankton Gets Served, based off the SpongeBob episode where Mr. Krabs traumatizes Plankton to the brink of That's not part of the creepypasta, by the way, that really happens. Well, funnily enough, that episode was originally going to be titled Plankton Gets Served, which I'm sure gave this whole thing a lot more validity to the kids who ran across it. Maybe it's real, especially since the story begins by mocking poor creepypastas, such as Squidward right off the bat trying to set itself apart. I think what I appreciate most about this one, comparatively at least, is that its horror remains relatively subtle. Also helps that it's basing itself off an episode that already had darker themes, the only real change here being that Plankton actually goes through with his attempt, waking up standing on a platform between heaven and hell, the faint signs of his family members yelling for him to jump down, which he does as the episode fades to black. That's it. There's no demonic entity, the author doesn't kill himself after watching it. It's more so trying to evoke a sense of Mandela effect from the reader, asking if anyone else had seen this alternate cut of the program before it was edited after its initial premiere on Nick.com. Candle Cove I remember being alright for that exact same reason. Also helps that it was its own original show and not based off Fanboy and Chum Chum or some shit. The author giving details about this old disturbing kid show they used to watch but for some reason can't find any information about online. It genuinely caused some people to create false memories of watching it as a kid. That's what a good lost cartoon creepypasta should do in my opinion. Not just say, Squidward plus hyper-realistic equals boo. Not fine literature or anything, but it's without a doubt the best we've looked at so far. But none of that matters, because this is the image associated with the story, and so it'll never be taken seriously. I was gonna talk about Happy Appy, which I used to hear a lot about but never bothered reading into because, well, look at it. So let's see what it's all about. Fuck no, not reading all that. I want to end this by talking about what I think is the definitive best cartoon creepypasta out there. Best because it's actually real. This is a well-known urban legend that turned out to be true. Bloody Grr. So back in the early 2000s, one of the artists on Invader Zim, Chris Graham, drew a version of Grr that's dripping in blood. And while Nickelodeon never told them they couldn't use it in the show, it was only because they were so sure it would be rejected that they didn't even bother to try put it in. Or did they? See, long after the series had been cancelled, a member of the crew would go on to claim that certain staff had gone and edited in a single frame of Bloody Grr staring directly at the camera into the last 14 episodes of the series. And so the hunt was on. They refused to tell anyone where the frames were, and so it was up to the fans to meticulously scour through each frame of these episodes. Assuming these were counted as 14 11-minute segments and not 14 22-minute episodes, that would force people to search through, at minimum, 221,760 frames, in the hopes of finding at least 14 which contain what very well could have just been an elaborate hoax. And so they searched, and searched, and searched. Until... What do you mean you can't see it? It's right there! Zoom in, fuck with the colors a bit, squint your eyes, and there he is. 100% confirmed real. To this day, only 2 of the supposed 14 Bloody Gurs have been discovered. It doesn't help that the show isn't readily available to watch in the greatest quality, which has resulted in fans believing to have spotted the Easter egg in places where there was none. In reality, probably just being a case of artifacting. That's what I love about Bloody Gur so much. It's so well hidden that it's caused these people to go crazy thinking they've seen him in places that very well could have just been their eyes playing tricks on them. Not really a creepypasta, I'm aware, but hey, I guess that's simply a testament to how lame most of these stories are. What's the best cartoon creepypasta in my opinion? Well, not a creepypasta at all. That's why it's so interesting to me. There didn't have to be any made-up narrative about Jonan Vasquez inserting Bloody Gur as a way of mourning the loss of his dead son or some shit. All it needed to do was provide a good mystery that wouldn't be too out of the ordinary given the show's nature. It's only the cherry on top that it turned out to be true. In a way though, I miss this era of the internet, where thousands of kids could believe something like Squidward's suicide or the Grieving was real. Now it's all about mascot horror, that drip feeds tiny bits of lore over the course of a decade to appeal to the game theorists of the world. The only interest in these older creepypastas nowadays coming from the occasional Friday Night Funkin' mod of all things. Either way, I'm glad to have grown up with these. As cringe as it is to say, it's a point in my life I'll always remain a little nostalgic for. Huh. Well, the only thing scary about that was his accent.